There's a decision that the Uniting Church nationally has made around Uniting Church ministers and Uniting Church congregations being able to conduct same-gender weddings. That is something, it's what the Uniting Church does. We often operate in that space. However, as you can imagine, that has caused significant controversy within the church community, and so we're in a place of what we call cultural conflict. And the work that I have to do as General Secretary is to say, within this context, this conflict exists and it's not going to go away, but what is it that this part of the church can do to assist people to live in the ambiguity and the pain of a conflict situation until we find a way out together. And the tool that has been brought to that has been, what does re-establishing cultural trust look like? Now, of course, in terms of incredible cultural failures across the banking sector, we've got a Royal Commission into the aged care sector, we've had a Royal Commission into institutional sexual abuse. That question is such a pertinent question for every business at this point in time. What would it take for this group to re-engage with the trust of the community? Because the trust of the shareholders is influenced, if it's a private company, trust of shareholders is influenced by their reaction of community to who you are. If it's a not-for-profit, the trust of your stakeholders absolutely is essential. So what are the steps that you always have to go back to remind yourself of how to establish or re-establish that trust? And so those simple tools that often get lost in the pain or the trauma of the moment just need to be brought back to bear. And Sonia and Altus Q has a tool around what does it mean to re-establish cultural trust. So we look at things like needs, expectations, and then what you deliver. So what's below the cultural line, what's above the cultural line, because until you actually rebuild that trust, you can't do your next steps. Or, you'd only do your next steps with one part of a complex organisation, and that's just not an option in my role. There was the pushback, how do you measure yourself against social licence? What does that look like? What are the criteria that you need to use? Because people want to, they don't just want an airy-fairy concept. They want to say, well, what does that look like? Now, the beauty is, of course, the not-for-profit sector, and particularly the church sector, that's what we do. We actually engage in social licence all the time. Because if we don't survive. We don't get contracts, we don't get donations, we don't get people engaging or participating with us. Altus Q understands what it means. They actually they're able to shift that nebulous concept of what does social licence look like, and by using the head and heart model, they actually say, well, it actually looks like this. And here are the criteria that you would need to offer yourself against in order, to offer yourself against publicly in order to develop that trust, to develop that engagement, to make sure that you're looking at the next big thing, not from one lens only, but all lenses.